Good evening, everyone. Guess we're just waiting on to see. I know Carol had mentioned that she would not be on the call tonight. Just waiting on Mark. We didn't get a call from Mark or any response from Mark that he wouldn't be on the meeting tonight. So I guess at this point we can just start the meeting, and if he jumps on at some point, then we can just continue on. So welcome everyone. Tonight's Town Council regular meeting, Wednesday, July 15th, 2020, via GoToMeeting. At this point, we will say the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
flag
of the United States
States of America,
and to the republic
for which is
and
one nation,
God,
under God,
with liberty.
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this point, we will move on to item number 2, which is visitors. Are there any visitors that wish to be recognized at this time? Again, any visitors wishing to be recognized?
I'm sorry, Mary Jo Phelps, 23 Delwood Avenue, having a little technical issues here. I would like to address a couple of issues based on the last meeting that I listened to. I tried to contact one of the council members about some of these issues, and I found that you all don't have individual email addresses apparently. And while I think that's too bad, I've looked, other towns don't have it either. It's just a blanket email. Anyway, regarding the committee, I'm sorry, I'm losing the Sustainability Committee. It was disheartening to me because Paul Bauer is a friend of mine, that Paul would, as the chair of the former Sustainability Committee, his input was not solicited. And to have everyone at the meeting, have most people who spoke have no idea of what the committee did or who was on the committee. And yet there's a draft charge for the committee. I didn't understand how that could happen. If it was either devised by the town council or someone else. I just don't understand how there could be a draft of a charge for a committee that didn't exist yet. And so while I was looking at the town charter, I found paragraph 5-7C says that you need to call a special town meeting. It says the town council shall call a special town meeting to consider and act upon recommendations for the creation, consolidation, change, or abolition of offices, boards, commissions, or agencies not otherwise provided for in this charter. And so I'm wondering if you're planning on having that special meeting before this committee is reformed.
Okay.
So, I just don't know. My main question is, where did that draft charge come from? If it wasn't produced, if it wasn't a product of the town council.
Mm-hmm. The charge that was put forth at our last meeting for the Sustainability Committee was put forth by the town manager. It was put forth as a charge to put together the committee in a more formal manner, in which membership was also part of that. I guess there was some look, I can have Carl jump in on this as well, to see what the last charge was. But there also needs, in any charge that the town puts forth, there also has to be a membership portion of that. And at the last, I guess, committee group, whatever it was called, there really wasn't any of that there. So it didn't seem that there was any transparency in getting that sustainable committee out to the public so that other people that wanted to be involved had the opportunity to be involved. So I guess it was the last Board of Selectmen, I guess maybe that put that together. I don't know. There were some minutes at a meeting where this was put together. So this formal charge that was put forth was the result of that.
But according to the charter, it's the town council that's supposed to do that, correct?
The town council would approve that charge. It was presented to us by the town manager.
Okay, then I guess I'm misinterpreting the charter then. Because it says that the town council shall call a special meeting to consider an act, that 5-7C is what I'm citing. And so it doesn't, I guess I'm misunderstanding is what you're telling me.
Carl, can you jump in?
Sure. Charge was written based on the need to make sure that you had a valid committee. The committee, as it existed in its last meeting, there were members who had not been appointed who were participating, who were voting in the committee process. And at a minimum, they needed to be appointed by the town council to be active members of the committee. That apparently had not taken place, and people were participating who should have been participating. So the intent was to make sure there's a valid committee going forward, that it doesn't have any issues with the town.
So I'm, again, if I'm trying to figure out why it says it's the purview of the town council in the charter. And frankly, the chair of the sustainability is a friend of mine, the pre-existing committee, and that he wasn't consulted about any charge or any, it just, on his behalf, I'm, it's upsetting to me. I have to admit. So is this the manager's charge, or is it the town council's charge, I guess is my question. And is there going to be the special meeting that the charter calls for?
As staff to the council and prepared something for council consideration. The council is welcome to amend it or adjust it as appropriate, filling the gap by giving something to the council. It's up to the council to make a final decision.
Okay. But is there going to be then a special meeting?
That would be something, I guess, that we would have to address amongst the council. So at this point, this is a visit.
All right.
This is a visit.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry for taking so much time.
No worries. At this point, is anybody else that would like to be heard as a visitor? Okay, hearing none, we can move on to number 3, which is the approval of the minutes for the July 1st, 2020 meeting. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
A second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Abstaining.
All right, we'll move on now to number 4. So tonight we're going to go through these individually because there's some comments that we've gotten. So I just want to make sure that we address some of the stuff that's going on some of these other appointments. So first we'll start with Alan Smith, Human Services Advisory Board for a term of 6/30/21. Alan, I can see you're on the call. Would you like to say a few words?
I'm just up for consideration for the Human Services Advisory position. I'll do the best I can. I'm up at the high school. I have a pretty good read on what's going on up there. And so far, the Peer Advocates and the React Club have done a fabulous job up there. And we'll see what goes on.
Thank you very much for coming forward. At this point then, a motion to approve Alan Smith to the Human Services Advisory Board for a term of 6/30/21.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Great. Thank you again, Alan.
Thank you.
Next up is, so the next two are seats that are going to move from alternate to a full seat. And this is something that Eric had actually mentioned to me, that this isn't addressed in the policy that we put forth when we came up with our policy for appointments and reappointments to boards that are vacated and or resigned. So at this point, I think we should address this in the policy going forth, if nobody has an issue with it, so that going forward, that we can move an alternate to a full seat without having to fall under that policy guideline of the 14 days and opening it up to everybody. So if there's any comments on that before we go through these two, but I feel that that's probably the best way to do it. If it's an alternate going to a full seat, same party, that we should be fine with doing it that way and making an amendment to our policy, having that written into it so that everybody understands it. And at that point, the vacated seat would be the alternate seat. And then that would be open and subject to the 14 days. Does that make sense to everybody? Or does anybody have any comments on that?
Sounds
Hi.
good to me, Chairman.
It's fair.
Christine Goupil, I have a question. How do we differentiate between the elected and appointed? Is that gonna be spelled out?
Elected's always the same way. We've never had, our policy is not to elected, it's only to appointed. The policy we set forth at the beginning is only for appointed seats, not elected seats. Any other comments? Okay, so at that point, if we're good, we'll then make a revision to the policy, noting that a alternate to a full seat, same party, that would be acceptable. So at this point, we have Paul Melanson, who is Department or Public Works Commission from an alternate to a full seat for a term of 6/30/23. A motion to approve Paul for the alternate to full seat.
I'll make the motion, Tim.
Second,
Second it.
any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstain? Okay, next we'll move on to Nancy Stone, same as the previous. Nancy, Zoning Board of Appeals, moving from a full seat to an alternate seat effective 7/16/20 for a term until November 2021. A motion to appoint Nancy Stone.
So moved. Second,
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Favor.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, and then move on. Lori Jaffe, same again, Zoning Board of Appeals from an alternate to a full seat effective 7/16/20 for a term until November 2021. Motion to appoint Lori Jaffe.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And abstain. Okay, and lastly, Sustainability Committee, at this point, kind of still don't have a full slate of 7 members that we can kind of put forth to the council at this point. So I want to give this a little bit more time so that people would have the ability to put their names forth. Eric was originally on a list that was there. Eric's decided to step aside and put forth another Green Party member. So at this point, we're still there's still a couple of seats that are left open that we feel we should give more time to have people come forth should they want to be on the committee. All right.
Christine Goupil on the phone. What is happening currently with the equity coach and the 2 interns? How are we to direct their work since the summer is short and there's a lot of work to be done still?
Mm-hmm. I mean, well, hopefully by the time, our next meeting, we'll have this full slate of people going forward, and then we can start having these meetings and post the meetings and get back to where it was before.
So is there any communication going to those folks, the 3 individuals working with?
Mary's
Working.
making us dial in.
Hang on, you're breaking up. Go ahead.
Is there any communication that is going back and forth between those individuals from the town? And since we do not have a committee formed, I would request that those communications be shared with the council so that we are all well aware of what processes are going to be put in place with the equity coach and the interns.
Okay. I will make sure all that info goes out to the council.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
This is Tim.
Hey, Tim.
I'd like to, as a point of order, whether it's tonight or at the next meeting, whenever we have this discussion, I'd like to get a clarification that was presented to us tonight on that section 5.7C, because I'm a little confused myself as to whether a special town meeting needs to be considered in regards to the changes that are being made to this sustainability committee. So I just wanted to make a note of that as we go forward.
So moved. We'll make sure we get something out of that as well.
Thank you.
All
You're
right,
welcome.
did you just ask for a motion? Christine Goupil, did you just ask for a motion? You said so moved.
Oh, I'm sorry. Misspoke. No, I didn't look for a motion. We'll take care of that. We'll address that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anything else? Okay, we're gonna move on now to number 5, which is the Indian River Tax Abatement Approval and Authorization. Carl?
So what you have in the agenda packet is the final version of the agreement for tax abatement based on the terms that were discussed previously with the town council. So what you have is a final document up for final approval of the council. So some of the highlights, you'll note that the prior abatement is repealed under this. Greylock understands that this agreement would supersede it. So the original agreement that was provided for previously to give relief associated to additional hazardous materials as part of the demolition of the property is null and void and then wrapped up into this. We're talking about eligible components and specifically invoking the state statute, which speaks to what an eligible activity is for tax abatement. As it relates to this particular property, the hotel component of it is not an eligible property under state law. So this is really more focused on the retail spaces. The assessment phase or the tax phase in takes place based on the schedule that was discussed previously with the council. Starting at 0 in year 1, 20, 40, 60, 80, and then 100% into taxation. There is a tax risk for the developer where they could get a tax bill for construction as it's going through before the CO. So that's their own issue to deal with, but that would be additional tax revenue to the town. The abatement does not apply to the land component. It pertains to the improvements. The personal property of the development, which would be in the hands of the individual tenant, is taxable. As the mill rate changes with the phase in, so the mill rate is not frozen as of today. It is whatever the mill rate is in that given year. There are 2 phases that are specifically called out. One which is to be completed by December 31st, 2022. The other to be completed by December 31st, 2025. So the first phase is really sort of the big Y that everyone's aware of. The language that's in the agreement is really just to make sure that they get to that point of getting a certificate of occupancy by the end of that point in time. Should they fail to get the CO, they have to set in motion, giving us information to explain why, what was the rationale for why they couldn't achieve those particular dates. And then it's up to the council to make a decision to either give them a new date to reach that milestone or to make the agreement null and void. So this reflects what we discussed last time. The developer is ready to execute and we'll just need to have the town council approve the final format of the agreement and we're good to go.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
Yes.
I thought and again, you know I'm against this, but I thought that year 1 was 20%. Now it's year 1 is 0.
Year 1 was always 0.
Was it always 0? which makes me even more negative.
Christine Goupil, I just have a quick question for clarification. Who's on the call? There's somebody voting under the name James King. Can we just clarify who that person is?
Yes, I was put in under on the council prior to COVID-19, and I've been having a hard time trying to log in and stuff. So I finally got it all squared away with the system.
Okay, I just wanted, it sounded as though, or it looked as though James King had spoken during a vote, and we just want to clarify who that was on the call.
Yeah, I was voted in the week before we stopped having local meetings in the town hall.
Voted where, sir?
I'm just a member of the council,
What council, sir?
the Republican Town Committee Council. Well, not really a council,
RTC.
committee.
This
An
is not the
RTC member.
Republican Town Committee, sir.
Oh, okay.
This is the Town of Clinton's Town Council.
Oh, okay. So then I'm just a guest.
Okay, good.
We just for clarification purposes, Mary Scatino, I don't know if you're able to just confirm all the votes then that have been taken.
Confirm, yeah.
Wouldn't be eligible to vote anyway.
Sorry, Mary.
Correct. To be honest, I wasn't looking to see if he was voting, so I was just looking at the council members.
Right. You wouldn't be eligible to vote regardless.
Correct.
So that were.
Right, I just
whatever
wanted to make sure we were clear on which voices were voting, and because it looked as though there was yays coming in under James King's name. When you see through the scrolling at the top, it shows who's speaking, and just looking to make sure everything's clear. We don't want any of the votes to be obstructed.
Glad we got that cleared away.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Any other questions?
If we're, do have this is Christine Gabriel. I do have a question on the abatement. With the build out, so you currently have, I believe the first component needs to be the big Y to be constructed. And correct me if I'm wrong, that's my understanding, the abatement. That is in direct conflict with the agreement, these sale and purchase agreement that we currently have with the developer. They are obligated within that document to build out the construction along Route 1 first and not the box directly in the back. Is that an issue for this abatement if they are in conflict?
Developer does not believe that they're in conflict. Big Y is the driver because that's a signed lease. He is trying to get other retail pieces tenanted so that he can get that moving. So it's a question as to whether that gets tucked into phase 1 at this point. He's got one lease signed for that retail space as we speak.
So does that mean we need to make amendments to the original contract then? That is a standard purchase and sale agreement. It is called out within the agreement that those need to be constructed first.
I'll verify with the council that the town hired to deal with the sale. Purchase and sale is the same attorney who put together this document, so I'll address it.
Thank you. One other question while we're on the topic of Indian River. Under the purchase and sale agreement, they are supposed to give, I believe it's quarterly reports on the status of the project. Don't believe the council has received any of those quarterly reports. So can we make a formal request?
Yep, I'll get your quarterly report.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any other comments? Okay, hearing none, then at this point, we'll look for a motion to approve the Indian River tax abatement approval and authorize the town manager to sign the contract. Or the agreement, I should say, sorry.
I'll make that motion, Tim.
Have a second?
Second.
Any other further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Abstain? All right, thank you very much. All right, move on to number 6, which is the finance director, financial report and line item transfers.
Hi, good evening, everyone. You've received the very preliminary June 30th full year fiscal 20 report. I'm just going to briefly go over the highlights of it. For the 12 months ending June, the revenues were 57.1 million or 1.9 over the full year budget, which, as reported before, 950 of it is due to FEMA and the 534 for the ECS excess revenue, 88 for additional special ed reimbursement, and some additional revenues that you can see in your reports. The final state revenue that we were promised was received in June for the 191,000 for the grants for municipal projects. So all of our state revenues were received. Tax revenues are at the same collection rate currently as they were in the prior year, 99.8%. There is a little bit higher balance of the fiscal year 20 revenues that remain uncollected at June 30th, and that's 95,000 compared to only 25,000 of the prior year. We did collect 4.2 million of advanced tax payments for fiscal year 21 in June. That is the same as last year. But that does not get recorded in fiscal year 20. That's an advance payment that does get recorded in 21, but that was a good sign. Expenditures preliminarily at June 30th are 53 million or 96% of the full budget, with 2.1 million remaining of unspent budgeted dollars. The majority of that unspent dollars relates to the school, 1.7, for which they're still making some payments on that, and 192,000 of encumbrances, some of that having to do with utility bills that are still to come in and some expenses the DPW has incurred, as well as there are some departmental expenses that I do believe are going to be under budget for some of them. The individual department budgets were pretty much in line with what I had forecasted in the previous month and will require the line item transfers, and those are listed in the report, but they're the ones that we've been reporting on. I will have the departmental line transfers at our next meeting. I was hoping to get to it for this meeting, but that didn't happen, so I will have those for you at the next meeting. The investment balances, there are $18 million in total investments. And the interest income is decreasing every month, 3,700 for the month of June. And the contingency note change remains the same at 117, and the fund balance is still at 15.7% of the preliminary expenditures. As far as projects, the finance department's been going through is that we successfully switched over to fiscal year 21. All the department budgets are uploaded. All the departments are working through entering purchase orders and recs into 21. We switched over to our new medical medical insurance as of July 1. And we're also working with the leasing company on some additional police vehicles which are going to be coming in. We also have started the audit process. The preliminary. I had a meeting with a partner actually today, and we went over their schedule and as well as some of recommended changes that they're going to be making to our financial reports to make them more in line with current pronouncements and disclosure requirements and to eliminate the redundancy that has been reported in the past. So we're moving forward on that. So things are getting busy in our office. That's where we're at for now. That concludes my report. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Sue.
You're welcome.
Anybody have any questions?
Hi, Sue. It's Christine Goupil. Would you be able to break out where we stand with all the FEMA reimbursements as to which they're coming from, whether or not they're the reimbursements back from Sandy and what else we've received? I saw the NRCS line, but what else we've been receiving, just so everybody on the council understands which projects are being wrapped up and which ones are still outstanding.
All the FEMA for Sandy and Irene has been received. Those grants are closed. Okay, the only FEMA the only FEMA reimbursements are received, which I believe was the additional 30,000, had to do with the flash flood. So I don't know where it stands on receiving any additional amounts with that at this point, but little pieces trickle in. But that's about it. So it's 935 for the previous storms, and then the flash flood, I think, was about 30.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
You're welcome.
Anybody else have comments or questions for Sue? Okay. Thanks again, Sue.
Okay, thank you. Good evening.
Thanks, Sue.
Move on to number 7. Before and the chairman's report, I will real quickly. Mary wants us to go back and redo the votes for Nancy Stone and Lori Jaffe, just so we make sure we're all on the same page here. So at this point, we will go back to appointments and reappointments and look for a motion to appoint or to move Nancy Stone, Zoning Board of Appeals, from a full seat to an alternate seat effective 7/6/20 for a term until November 2021.
So move, Mark Richards.
Second,
I'll second it.
any other further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? And then we will go down to Lori Jaffe. Again, Zoning Board of Appeals from an alternate to a full seat, effective 7/16/20 for a term until November 2021.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? All right, thank you. Nothing really under chairman's report. Just wanted to address the one thing that we talked about at the last meeting, which is the senior center. Still working on that and trying to see what we can do to put together a group so that we can do some digging into that. So next meeting, we'll definitely have something put together so that we can put forth to the council to set a committee to start reviewing that. Now we will move on to chairman's report. I'm sorry, town manager's report.
Christine Goupil. So are you going to be for the senior center, you said, just for clarification? There's people talking in the background.
Yeah, correct. So the senior center, I discussed the last time, seeing if we can get together a committee that we can start looking into that to see what we can do. We kind of want to put together not only the committee itself, but also give them a charge and give them directives as far as, what information we would need so that we can look into making a good decision as it relates to this going forward.
And when will you be looking for representation on that committee? And when will that discussion happen?
Next meeting?
Pardon?
Next meeting?
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yep, got you, Eric.
Okay, I think earlier my mic wasn't working. Sorry about that.
No problem.
I wanted to ask you about a broader Facebook presence and some more community. I've gotten a number of inquiries from voters about not knowing necessarily where to go for certain things. Is there anything we could do to put together a concerted effort to get our, if not anything else, our Facebook presence, some higher numbers?
What sort of information are people looking for?
Well, I mean, any types of grants, any types of housing. I mean, these could even be state concerns, but they don't quite know exactly where to go with the town. Is there? I think I'd like to see our Facebook presence a little bit broader. Put it that way.
I mean, I guess we could look into it. We do have the town Facebook page. It's just a matter of getting it out there, getting it shared. Having everybody kind of push it through to their friends, family, and whoever they have on, on Facebook, which would get us that, a bigger presence out there.
Sure.
Other than that, I don't kind of, we talked about this, at the first meeting, as far as, what would be the best way for us to get the communications out to the town. And it's just difficult, because there's a lot of different outlets where we can go to get communication out there. What is the best one? It's tough to say. So, I guess we can, look into some, some different ways on how we can get our presence out there. So certainly something probably we can look into.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Dennis.
this has nothing to do with Eric just said, but it has something to do about communications. It has no reflection on you, sir. But maybe I should probably direct it towards Mr. Kilduff. We get those COVID-19 reports, and it's a terrible thing when we hear about the individuals passing away. But I'm wondering, Mr. Kilduff, I don't know if it's in your purview, to ask the health district there if they could give us other information that might be a little bit more, not pleasant, but more encouraging to the public. In other words, what I'd like to hear or see is certainly by now, some people had to recover from the COVID-19. And all we keep seeing constantly on the state program and people keeping track at home, I guess, is that Clinton's in the neighborhood of about 60 or 65 people that have come down with COVID-19. But certainly some of them must have recuperated by now. And so I guess I'm asking is for the health, I would hope that maybe the health district could give us numbers like how many are actually hospitalized now from Clinton, how many have recovered, and so it gives us a little bit of, for the lack of any other word, hope. Things have to be getting a little better. All we keep hearing is, well, the count's going up, and unfortunately, individuals are passing away. And I'd like to hear a little positive news once in a while. And so I don't know, Mr. Kilduff, is that within your realm, or can you ask?
That is
Certainly,
something
it's
that
no
I asked.
reflection. It's no reflection on you, Mr. Chairman, because I know you just report whatever they give you, and I really appreciate that because I think the public appreciates it because it's nice to keep up with what's going on. But I'd like to hear some positive news also once in a while. I'm sorry for interrupting you, Mr. Kilduff. Go ahead.
I did ask the health department specifically what constitutes recovered. Because clearly that's something that you'd want to be at least be able to report on. You had 65 people and you have 5 people who've passed away. You've got 60 left. What constitutes recovery? The state doesn't track any information that speaks to recovery. They're only tracking the infection rate. So there really isn't a data set to go to that says this is how many cases have recovered. And I'm not sure there's really a health definition of it at this point either, because people that have come back from the initial signs that they've shown still have lingering effects from COVID ongoing. So we don't really have a good definition of what it is, and the state isn't tracking that kind of information. If the state was tracking that information, it would flow through to the health department, and we would have that. The only additional information that they're tracking is the difference when you've got infections and people passing away, whether they're in a long-term facility or a nursing home. That's a different track of data that's being captured and reported at this point in time. So that's probably more relevant information to right now, Old Saybrook and Chester, because they both have COVID in nursing home facilities in those communities. We don't have what you're looking for available to us at this point.
All right, thank you, sir.
Christine Goupil, just speaking as a member of the health district, a lot of the information that you're looking for, unfortunately, is falls within HIPAA and can't be shared. The only reason we do get that information when they first test positive is the structure in the state currently. So I certainly concur it would be helpful for people to know that people are recovering and seeing the other side of it. But right now, you can't. That's just not available to the public, unfortunately.
I don't want their names, Christine. I mean, I don't have to know their names or where they live. I just like to have a number that, hey, maybe 35 or 40 of those people that were initially diagnosed with COVID-19 are now successfully back on the recovery. And, you know, this just generic information like that, I think would be helpful. But I certainly understand the HIPAA laws, but thank you for the answer to my question.
Anybody else? Okay. We'll move on to the town manager's report.
So I have a few things for you this evening. You have my written report. At the top of it, the federal declaration of an emergency is due to expire on September 9. So with that, the authority that creates some of the executive orders the governor has issued since the pandemic started would also expire. At this point, there's a conversation taking place in terms of what of the governor's executive orders would live on and what would be the mechanism by which they would live on, whether it becomes new state statute or some other device. There was a call at 5 o'clock today with the governor and some of his legal staff to give general updates to municipalities. The topic came up there in terms of what the state is going to do relative to the executive orders and some of the mechanisms that are in place to help with public health. So there's no answer now, but I guess they're going to be working on it to come up with something before September 9th. In addition to what you have in the written report and a few other items, previously, I think it was one of your early meetings, you received, or you voted on having a pavement management survey done, which was going to grade the town's roads and help put together a plan for paving the town's streets. That company has finished up their work and they're prepared to make a presentation to the town council. So that's something we would be scheduling for a presentation to take place during one of your August meetings so that you can get that feedback and help inform what will then start to be a lead up to the budget process.
Carl, this is Christine Goupil. At two separate meetings, I had asked about the sidewalks and whether they're going to be included in the survey. One was during the interim town manager, Pete Neff, had been brought forward this request. And seeing as though they're doing the work, they're going to be out there, it makes a lot of sense to be surveying the sidewalks at the same time. They are in a very poor condition, and they are also part of the federal funding that comes down through the COG as well. So roads and sidewalks are included. And I also mentioned in another meeting, will that be part of this plan?
I'll follow up with the Public Works Director and send you an answer on the sidewalk specific question. So at this point, and just the report's ready and they're ready to present. So I'll nail that down for you and send you an email and give you the answer.
Thank you.
Additional items. So there will be a special session of the General Assembly. 4 items are to be taken up. The 2 that are of most immediate concern to the municipalities. One is allowing for absentee balloting. This is to allow an extension to have absentee ballots used in the November general election. It's anticipated that that will go through the House next week and the Senate following. And police accountability will be a second bill also to be considered by the General Assembly. The Council of Governments is working on the Regional Plan of Conservation and Development. There is local town meetings being scheduled. The meeting for Clinton will take place on August 10th, a regularly scheduled meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. So invitations went out to a number of land use boards today, reminding them of that date and that they should come prepared. For another item for future agendas, we should be having a meeting with John Bennett. He should be giving you a report on the Pearson property. There was a meeting that took place with representatives from the Attorney General's office, and he should be giving you a report on what the outcome of that meeting was, and then what the next steps are. I don't know whether that's executive session or not, but he should be get some time in front of you to explain where we're at on that front. Most importantly is, after 4 years of not being funded, the Small Town Economic Assistance Program grant is being funded by the governor this year. So the STEEP program used to be very helpful to municipalities as a way to fund capital needs. It was a way to fund economic development projects. There was a lot of municipal benefit that came from the program. The way it's being launched now, and part of this is the debt diet that was reviewed previously with Governor Lamont, is they made a number of rule changes for how STEEP is to work. The idea is to focus on shovel-ready projects. They are not going to be looking at multiple extensions. So when you are awarded a STEEP grant, the contract term for those dollars will be 2 years. You'll get a 1-year extension if you're not done with the project or haven't executed the funds. After that 3-year time frame, you're supposed to turn it back. Whereas in the past, the state was a little looser on that. No changes in scope will be approved. So what you apply for is what you have to do. If you apply for changes or the need shifts, they're not going to allow for reprogramming of STEEP dollars. A municipal match is required. So there has to be some sort of town money in the financing for whatever the STEEP project is going to be. Those dollars have to be in place at the time of application. Local match does not include federal funds, does not include private funds. It includes local money. And in terms of cash flow, the state will be in reimbursement mode rather than providing upfront allocation of funds. So there are some changes to how it used to work. It certainly changes how we would use STEEP and what our applications would be with the requirement for a municipal match. Salaries and admin expense, which used to count as a match, no longer counts as a municipal match. So in terms of projects, there's a wayfinding project which could be STEEP eligible, but we need to have local funding put into it. There's interest amongst some members of the business community to extend a gas line down Nod Road, which would support some manufacturers. That's not shovel ready, and it's in the embryonic stage with the gas company. Similarly would be the water line for Rocky Ledge. That's not shovel ready as we speak right now. Facade program for the downtown was something that was a potential launch, but we're back to the need to inject local monies into it. Looking at what COVID was doing to the town, it seemed as if there was a need for some additional business support, whether it was a loan or a grant, something that was small in capital, possibly to help folks retool or reposition themselves coming out of the pandemic. STEEP is not going to be a funding source for that. Theoretically, small city CDBG could be used for that unless there are going to be rules wrapped around that funding source, which precludes any kind of local business support lending. So in terms of shovel ready and where we have funding allocated, it really means we're more looking at the capital plan for something where dollars were set aside already, and which would then give us the ability to use some pre-existing budgeted dollars to advance a capital project or something from that's sitting on the back burner, move it forward because there's some local cash at play at present. Unfortunately, the maximum award this particular round is diminished. In the past, it's been $500,000, so it has had a good bang for its buck in the past. The maximum grant amount that can be requested in this round is $128,205. So the project scope will have to be smaller. So I don't like to lose an opportunity getting a grant, but the requirements that have been put into the SEEP round for this particular round do limit where we can deploy those dollars without trying to come up with what constitutes a local match.
Thank you, Carl. Any
The only
questions?
other thing I have is sort of my last item, and Mary, if you could do the share screen.
Carl, I do have a question about the previous report. You want me to wait?
No, go ahead.
So since we did get quite a bit of reimbursements, FEMA reimbursements, and you did mention the facades, is that not feasible in terms of the match that's required?
We need to do an appropriation. So at this point, the council would have to appropriate some sort of funds that would go towards one of the grant programs. And I would have to have that before the application due date, which is August 14th. So if you don't do a special meeting, the first meeting in August, you'd have to appropriate some local monies to support a facade program.
And do you not see value in it right now? I know that was one of the plan of conservation developments pretty high on the list. And it has come up quite a bit with a lot of the local businesses that the facades are really bringing the downtown overall view beautification down.
To me, it was sort of the obvious low-hanging fruit as a potential SEEP project to be done, assuming it was being funded. I've done facade programs before, and the way we worked it in that particular time, the local match was administrative support, administering the funds, doing the education and promotion of it. The local, we were looking for businesses to put some cash in, so it wasn't just a pure grant, and then counted as the leverage. There was a different SEEP rounds, different rules. So for the town to go forward with it, we would need to have some kind of appropriation to support that activity now, given these rules. My hope was that we wouldn't have to put money into the game, and we could use the state's cash in order to support the business community. So I really look for some direction if you want to take on something that's different than alternate financing for something that's already been approved in the budget as part of the capital.
Well, just for clarification, John Allen pointed out that EDC did do a survey of that, and the downtown business owners were very enthusiastic about the prospect. So if it is something that the council is in favor of, it might be good to expedite it.
Yeah, I'm fully aware what the EDC did. I had conversations with the chair of the EDC asking for what information they might have had on business community receptivity. I know you have some issues with local businesses owned locally and business buildings that are owned out of town. I've structured programs in the past that allow for tenants to take advantage of facade work. It was just really sort of what was going to be a barometer of interest. Having that barometer of interest helps make a more compelling grant application because you have people that are going to expend the funds. And given the fact that you've got a timeline of 3 years to commit all those funds, that certainly is helpful. Given the smaller dollar amount, you should be able to push that kind of funding out quickly across the business community to improve facades. If there are no other questions, Mary, could you do it now? So I wanted to go over a little bit of a higher level review behind the form of government, some of it as a refresher and to build on some comments I've made before. This first page, I assume at this point should be known by everyone at this point. The council manager form of government recognizes the expertise of elected officials serving as policymakers, mapping out a vision for the community, and focusing on policies that govern. So there's a clear focus on policy, and then the day-to-day operations are devoted to, given over to a professional who focuses on what the core delivery of services are. Next. Council roles. The role of the chairman is the public face who presides at meetings, facilitates communication and understanding between the elected and appointed officials, and would assist in advocating policy decisions. Town council members are the legislative body and enjoy the authority as a community policymaker. You're in a role approving the budget before it goes out to the public, and should be focused on community big picture goals and what those bigger issues and challenges are that face Clinton. Next. The manager's role is preparing the budget for consideration of the council, providing objective information about town operations, offering long-term consequences to decisions made by the town council, offering policy recommendations, and focusing on day-to-day operations. Next. I wanted to share with you some information of things that I've collected over 20 years and sort of lessons of leading councils. Leading councils govern, they discuss problems that they're trying to solve, discuss desired outcomes, and provide direction, guidance to staff to go forward. A leading council sets direction by looking ahead 5 years. It's really trying to have a longer term perspective rather than a short term, and set strategic goals. And leading councils value teamwork. They work together finding issues and developing strategies, work on a shared agenda rather than an individual agenda, and cooperation is really at the core of a good working council, and it's really the consensus of the group rather than the will of one. Next, the challenge for the council is to look beyond today. Goals help set the town's direction. Council members should share ideas, focus on issues, and strive for consensus. Trying to move again beyond that single issue agenda to an agenda for all. Next, I've raised issues in the past of doing a goal setting. So the process of a goal setting retreat with the council would be setting a shared vision, identifying what the critical issues are and what success looks like for what the town wants to tackle, developing a policy strategy, and more importantly, developing priorities, developing a policy agenda with an action plan associated with it. That agenda gives me the ability to then work to better align services with where the town council's goals want to be. Having a strategic projects list certainly would help in the case of grants that come along to make sure that we have full support and alignment on that front. The goals manifest themselves in the annual budget process, and ultimately you get to measuring success, which would be, from a management perspective, is performance measurement, which then moves into performance management and trying to improve our services and our operations. Those things can happen with a common set of goals from the town council that support the direction that you want to take the community. It's something that I've worked with other councils and boards on. It's been helpful to them. It's been helpful to me. And I think despite the fact that we've been dealing with COVID for a number of months, it may be something that the council could find value in here as an effort to take up in a workshop opportunity to help set a direction for the town as we try to work forward and work on issues other than COVID. And with that, that's the end of my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Carl.
Thank you.
Eric's trying to talk, but he is not coming through.
You're muted, Eric.
No, not working.
Eric sent in 2 questions under the chat.
Okay.
The first one is, where is CCM with their property tax relief study?
CCM had done a property tax relief study in the past, and I believe it was completed. There was a blue ribbon panel that was created under the Malloy administration, which was looking at tax incidents for who pays. I think that was part of where CCM was going, which involved providing a reduction in state sales tax, allowing for a local sales tax as an additional revenue source which would then theoretically result in a reduction in mill rate. When I was in Pennsylvania, we had a local sales tax. It forces you to think a little differently about how your community works and where that tax revenue comes in beyond just the singular that Connecticut relies on, which is just the property tax.
Eric said he thought that the CCM study was pending.
I'm pretty sure that they've completed it, but if I can double check it, but I know they provided significant input on the tax incident study, which would have been at the heart of it.
His second question was to you, Carl, which is with your experience with CHFA, what do you suggest regarding affordable housing?
Well, I'm assuming that that means the desire is to build more affordable housing in town. So I think the topic that currently is being discussed up in Hartford is sort of the land use approval process, which kind of is at the heart of all affordable housing discussion, is what can be approved through planning and zoning, or do you have a developer go the 830G route, which overrides local zoning and provides for the opportunity to develop affordable housing. Usually in a community like Clinton, you've got a track record where you work with a developer, and it's a more friendly process rather than adversarial. So it's a matter of identifying a site, working it through your land use boards, you really have to identify who's going to be your developer that you want to work with as your partner. The developer would help inform some of the decisions on the capital stack, which would be used to finance the project. So my assumption is that they would chase every funding source, which is pretty much the way most projects go. So you're bound to competitive rounds that the Department of Housing issues as sort of the soft money, just deeply subordinated debt. There may be tax credits that could be leveraged from the CHFA. There may be direct hard debt that's leveraged through CHFA. There's state historic and federal historic tax credits, which would support a building that maybe has some historic character associated with it. And then any other private foundation monies. Usually there's a municipal tax abatement that's 100% relief from taxation on a property of that nature. So there's a number of moving pieces, sort of which one comes first. I think normally you would have a property in mind, then go to trying to find a developer, whether it's a for-profit or nonprofit. And then the developer would be the partner that would work on getting a project that would go in front of local planning and zoning. If you're looking for a specific demographic, senior housing, I know that's come up a couple of times in town since I've been here. Senior housing is not going to be funded by the Department of Housing. So you kind of can't have a senior preference in order to leverage their funds. So it's really more looking at something that's just general affordable housing.
Christine Goupil, I think we have to get back just to some fundamentals within the town. We can't even get affordable housing zoning through our planning and zoning commission right now. So the only mechanism currently that has been able to get the process through is through the 830G. We missed the opportunity with the development of the Unilever property, putting any zoning requirements being either 80% affordability, 60% affordability, which is not unusual. We do fall well below the threshold of having affordable housing in town. So it's definitely a topic that needs to happen. And we definitely need to educate the public on what affordable housing is, first and foremost, before I think we get into the nuts and bolts of what can be done. There's a mechanism in the town charter that allows for the housing partnership to be formed, and that is sort of in a quasi state right now without the leadership of the land use office. You really need it being driven by somebody who's gathering the statistics on affordable housing in town, the locations, and then also working with developers who might be interested in bringing it to town. So if there's interest, we could look at the housing partnership. structure. But again, we need to have a planner who's available really within the town to be leading that type of project.
So again, based on current discussions, there is a push for the General Assembly to take up affordable housing and specifically local zoning. It did not get on the agenda for the special session. It's anticipated it'll get picked up in the regular session, which may change some of the playing field as it is on the local level, to really address where you could go with affordable housing. It's all about incentivizing people. So whether there's a zoning regulation that allows for increased density, that would provide an opportunity for affordable to be tucked into increased density. A number of municipalities have that as a zoning regulation, whether it's by special permit or other mechanism. That's one of the tools in the toolbox. In addition to sort of a housing partnership, a lot of communities do affordable housing trust funds, where there is an additional levy added to the building permit fee, which provides local funding to address affordable housing programs. That could be multifamily, or it could be single family, it could be site acquisition, it could be unit acquisition in a condo complex, something of that nature. So there are other tools to be considered. I think just sort of the flavor of the question is, I think you're starting with this fundamental question of where is it going to be and how much is it? Are you going to strive to build? Yeah, Liberty Place, which was a significant development for this community. That level of density and that level of mass, where really you've got to work that through the land use boards, and that's really where you have to have that conversation with them. So I hope that answers your question. I know you're on mute, Eric, but if you got anything else, you could put it in the chat.
I think the issue with affordable housing here in town has always been the issue of, the requirement of this 10% that the state puts upon us, but we don't, as a town, own property here in town that we could make affordable. So it becomes more of an issue of getting a developer that wants to come in and develop a property that we may have. And again, where's that property? So we're sort of limited in the availability that we have here in town, to get this done. And it's, it's a difficult thing to put together sometimes. And you have to have a developer on board. Obviously, as a town, the town could be willing to do it, but where are we going to put it? So that's always the big push, is where in town do we have this space or property that can be developed as affordable? And that seems to have always been the question that we dealt with on planning and zoning for years and years. So, going forward, yes, putting a group together that can look at these things as places or destinations where it can happen, it would be important. But again, do we have that land availability to do it?
Just for clarification, the allocation of land is not the issue. The zoning is the issue. So creating zones in the town that would be allowed to have affordable housing. 830Gs can go absolutely anywhere. They can go in residential R60, R80, R110. But again, affordable housing, ones that have the requirement, the being affordable, 80% median income, 60% median income, are only going to be found in zones that we allocate within town. Currently, there are 0 zones that have allocated for, no, I take it back. There is one zone that was created for one particular property on the east end of town on Route 1, and that is it currently, I believe.
It's not usually a zone that's designated as the affordable housing zone. You don't want to get into spot zoning or creating something of an environmental justice issue. A lot of communities tackle it as an overlay zone, which is then allows for increased density and allowing for multifamily. I think there's less than 5 communities in the state of Connecticut that don't allow multifamily, period. Everything else is by special permit. There's a handful that allow for multifamily by right. Those are usually in the cities. Everything else is by special permit. And that special permit mechanism can be a challenge to navigate. So usually there's a partnership with the municipality where the municipality is on board with the project. I've seen so-called friendly 830Gs where there's a desire to get the court to approve it rather than the local board, but nobody's adverse to it. In other cases, there's more of a partnership. Those mechanisms are usually the way you touch some of those public funding sources that I described. If somebody goes 830G and it's an adversarial arrangement, they're usually not seeking the public funding route just because of the length of time and risk associated with the court case. And again, when you're seeking those public funds, you've got to have everything lined up, ready to go when you come in to apply. You shouldn't be coming in to apply with a court case pending. So getting those funds, they're limited, they're competitive. The type of development you would want in town helps inform the funding source you're going to go to, for which ones are going to be the most responsive to the community. And then those funding sources carry with them the affordability requirements for the number of units at which AMI band want to support.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you very much, Carl. Moving on to number 9, which is the Town Council Committee Liaison Reports. Does anybody have anything to report?
I do, Mr. Chairman. This is Tim.
Yep, Tim.
Briefly, on the EDC meeting yesterday, I think it was significant that the council, EDC, was able to get Senator Murphy's office to issue a passport for one of Bosch's employees to go to Portugal to do some work for the company. I thought that was significant. Also significant is the 6 companies that are currently on the manufacturing council of EDC. Not one of them has had to lay off an employee. So that I think is also significant. And finally, they are beginning to work on the website. Mary, I think they were going to contact you about the need to set up a server. They didn't know if they could go through the town or have to get their own. So they were going to contact you. I don't know if they have yet or not, but you should be expecting a call from somebody from EDC.
No, I
That's my-
haven't spoken to them yet.
Okay, you should probably be getting a call. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Anybody else?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Dennis Donovan here.
Yes.
Police Commission, we met, they met just last Monday evening. We had a person-to-person meeting down at the conference room there in the police station. It was handled very nicely. A lot of social distancing. There's nothing really dramatic to report about the police department. Everything is going along according to Hoyle. As you heard before, they came in under budget for the year, even though they had large overtime in the communication sector. They were able to make it up in the police side of the sector, so it was a wash, which I thought was fantastic. They are up to full staff now. All injured individuals are back. And I guess 2 things I'd like to comment on was that there were several letters of praise from the public, which were sent to the police chief, police department, by citizens of the town, favorable to the conduct of our police department and just the police department in general. As well as another thing that I thought was interesting is, again, there was several small donations made by residents of the town. And I think this speaks well that our police department is well appreciated here in this town. So that's my report about the police department. I have another report to give you, and that is I just received an email yesterday from the chairman of our Morgan School Building Committee. and he's been in contact with our Lang and Associates. They're the ones that are handling all the final preparations so that we can go to the state finally with our completed applications and try to get back the money that the state has been holding on the project through these last couple of years. From what Langen is reporting to us, that they are almost 80 to 90% ready to go. They've done all the mapping which is required. All they have to do now is fill out some applications, and hopefully within 2 weeks we'll probably, I hope, call a meeting of the building committee and try to finalize the preparation to go to the state. So that's some good news, because if we get that to the state and they can give us back the money that they've been holding on that project for since we started the project, that would certainly be welcomed to the town. So thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Anybody else?
I don't know, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you now, Eric.
Oh, wow, okay. Well, I have a quick report here. The Inland Wetlands Commission met for the first time since early March on July the 7th. Having attended this meeting and later speaking with Commissioner Harley, it appears that IWC, the application fee structure, needs modification. Currently, the town and not the applicant pays the bill for the engineering review consultant. Inland Wetlands Commission is looking to adjust the fee structure so the applicant incurs the cost, lessening the financial burden on the town. Planning and Zoning Regulations Subcommittee, the discussion of proposed changes to storage yards and other non-residential usage. Commissioner Kravitz recommended that the town council enact an ordinance that requires annual inspections of the yards to make sure they are complying with the standards. A discussion of possible amendments to the transit-oriented development overlay zone, section 23, and then discussion of seasonal outdoor dining. The July 6th public hearing, our consultant town planner summarized the intent of proposed regulation amendments to section 14 vendors. The amendments are to add details, clarify the language, and add a fourth category of vendors. He also explained that he had continued working with Indian River Landing as they make their way through the state traffic requirements for permits and getting a demolition permit in place. He has also followed up on permitting for the West Main Street mini golf ice cream development. As Carl mentioned, the governor is going to announce the next round of steep grants. Our consultant said that they will apply given the commission's favorable report. Also explained discussion section 10.52, the contractor's business and storage yards, which I had mentioned. 4 years ago, as you know, the regulations were adopted but turned over on procedural appeal. Commissioner Clark moved to bring this to a public hearing on August the 3rd. And those are my two reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Yep.
Anybody else at this time? Okay, hearing no others, we're looking for a motion to adjourn.
We'll move.
Second,
Okay.
discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Thank you very much again, everybody. Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
This
Good night,
conference
all.
is no longer being recorded.